Access to Democracy is made possible thanks to the following organizations. Sheridan & Dulas, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm that has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News and World Report every year since 2009. Sheridan & Dulas are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Distillery was among the first 50 microdistilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at their facility. If you're interested in learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check their website and plan a visit to tour their facility and taste their spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
This is Access to Democracy. Welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Bill Raker. Today we're going to be talking about a very intriguing theme that I've called, Can the Current State of Political Affairs Get Any Worse? And you could phrase this as a multiple choice question perhaps, like A, yes, B, no, C, maybe, D, probably, or E, I don't know. So we're going to try to answer that question with our guest today on Access to Democracy, Patrick Coolican. Patrick, welcome to the program.
Good to be here.
I've been anxious to have Patrick on the program for some time, and finally we got our schedules to work together, and so here we are. Now, Patrick, before I ask you to try to respond to that question, can the state of politics get any worse? Let's have our viewers meet you and learn a little bit about your background. So would you share with us, maybe some of the things that you did as you progressed through your career and came up to where you are today as the editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Reformer?
Sure. Well, I grew up in a big kind of fractious Irish Catholic family where argument, spirited discussions were a part of the dinner time routine.
Stronger than debate.
Yeah, a little stronger, but at the end there was always a coming together, and became a political junkie very early in life, high school even. I studied philosophy and literature at college, kind of stepped away from politics, and then in 1999, as the 2000 presidential election was coming up, a friend of mine and I decided we wanted to play some part in that contest. And we came up with this idea to create a website, which at the time, this is very early internet, it was kind of like a strange idea. So we started this website and we traveled around with the presidential campaign, the primary campaign, Iowa, New Hampshire, back again, sleeping in the truck. Readers of our new website would offer their couches to us. We closed up shop on Super Tuesday when the nomination was settled, Al Gore and George W. Bush. But that was kind of my first taste of journalism. We weren't getting paid, but I went out there and I talked to people, and there's a surprisingly good access in those campaigns, especially kind of minor campaigns where they're happy to get any coverage, even these two 20-something guys with a website in the year 2000. So I took that experience and some of the published work I now had, again unpaid, and went to newspapers, and then my career kind of followed a more traditional path. I was in Seattle with the Seattle Times. I was in Las Vegas, where again I stepped back into the presidential campaign in 2008, where we had a early presidential caucus. I got to interview Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, et cetera. And then in 2014, wound up as a Capitol reporter at the Star Tribune. I was there for 5 years. I was approached by some folks at a nonprofit called States Newsroom, and they're concerned about the loss of local and state politics and policy media because newspapers, radio stations folded up shop, and the decisions that are made at your city hall and your state legislature are often the most impactful for you and your family. School funding, road funding, criminal justice issues, that's all decided at your city hall and your legislature, not really at Congress. And so their idea was we gotta start replacing these emptied out capital bureaus around the country. And so they recruited me to start the Reformer in Minnesota, and we launched on January 14th, 2020, which turned out to be an amazing time to start a news organization. The pandemic started 3 months later. George Floyd was murdered a couple months after that. And then we had the 2020 election, and it's been kind of nonstop since then. We're free, no paywall, no advertising, truly independent. I do have, and our funding comes from just donors and loyal readers. We do focus on statewide politics and policy issues. There's a fair amount of good political and policy coverage, I would say, in Minnesota, unlike in a lot of other states where, again, regional newspapers and radio stations have really died off. We still have that, and we have good TV coverage as well. But I thought there was a niche for something that was a little bit more adversarial and confrontational. And so we try to focus on investigations and harder edge stories.
I was going to say the harder side of the news.
A little bit, yeah. And then as well as analysis, I'm able to bring my experience at the Capitol and covering politics for such a long time to a lot of contemporary issues. And then we also try to do some storytelling and try to get the voices of regular people who are being affected by these politics and policies. So that's where we are. We're very small. We're only 4 reporters and a mostly full-time photographer and myself and some freelancers. But we're trying to compete at a high level and provide the kind of coverage maybe people felt was lacking.
So the Minnesota Reformer is purely digital.
Right.
There's no print edition of it.
Right.
But I would remind our viewers that there's information scrolling across the bottom of your screen about how you can find out information about the Minnesota Reformer and subscribe to it, as you said, for free, right?
Right. We have a daily newsletter which features our journalism from that day, which is, again, politics and policy as well as guest commentaries. And we welcome people to submit those. It's one of my favorite parts of our offerings, that we're getting the voices of people who might not otherwise have a voice. So yes, daily newsletter. And of course, we're on social media. And we encourage people, if you like it, then tell your friends.
Well, you said something, Patrick, that reminded me of the phrase, I think it was Tip O'Neill that said it, that all politics is local. And what reminded me is when you were talking about the local forms of government, like in your city, your county, at the state level, and a lot of times there isn't really good media coverage of the things that go on in those governmental bodies that really impact the citizens. Is that what you're finding?
Yeah, I mean, I think that media has become so focused on national politics, and obviously President Trump is a big part of that because he attracts so much attention. And there's been a lot of investment in national political coverage at Politico, just in the last 20 years, Axios, Vox, and while at the same time we've seen this really emptying out of local and regional media, and so that's what we're trying to address. The issue of that Tip O'Neill quote, I think is also worth taking up because I think that was true in Tip O'Neill's time. Unfortunately, I don't think it's true anymore. And in fact, I would say the opposite. All politics is national. For better or worse, people now often view local and state issues through the lens of national politics. And there's a somewhat complicated history as to why that change has taken place. We used to have two very heterodox political parties, very diverse political parties. You'd have very conservative Democrats and very liberal Republicans, and so you'd have these shifting coalitions. And the reason O'Neill was saying that was because there were no Democrats or Republicans when it came to getting a local bridge built. And that's just not really true anymore, because our parties have been sorted ideologically. So now you have essentially a left party and the Democrats and a right party and the Republicans, and that has filtered down all the way to school boards. In fact, we've seen some of the most contentious and ideological fights in school boards, and it's you can say it's unfortunate because I think it probably has contributed to polarization and incivility in our politics. But it's how things are, and we just have to confront that reality. And I don't think it does any good to pine for the good old days when Tip and Ronald Reagan clinked glasses and came to a deal. I think we just have to figure out how to get through this current moment, and while acknowledging the reality, not trying to deny it or go back to the old days.
So, Patrick, we're getting into the theme about can politics get any worse? I mean, right here in our state of Minnesota and nationally. So, what's your take on the effects of this polarization? I mean, you said we have to deal with it for the moment. How long is that moment going to be?
That's a good question. I think that much has been there's a sort of cause and effect going on with the way that media has changed. There used to be that we had real significant gatekeepers, and we had newspaper monopolies. We had 3 networks. I mean, even in the 90s, we had a couple cable news networks. We had major national news magazines. And I think that put some guardrails on the discourse, for better or worse. I mean, there were certain ideas that were considered out of bounds that maybe shouldn't have been. On the other hand, and now fast forward to the present, everybody can be a publisher. And we've democratized media, and again, for better or worse, everybody has a voice, but it has allowed for a particular kind of conspiratorial discourse to really take hold, and a lack of, frankly, factual comment, and that, of course, has bled into politics, and there's a kind of feedback loop where media has become more extreme, more vitriolic, and politics reacts to that. I mean, I think especially in the Republican Party right now, the real power is in this group of essentially propagandists who have big social media followings and podcast followings, now YouTube followings, and the elected officials seem to react to that as opposed to the other way around. And I think that's a dangerous situation because the podcasters, the YouTubers, their primary concern is the audience.
Yeah, the eyes and ears on what they're saying
right,
and doing.
Yeah, I mean, this is a profession for them. And they also have, they themselves are encountering the problem of what we call audience capture. So even, if they want to be intellectually honest and rigorous, their audience might not let them. And so there's a dangerous moment there. And then I think there's, you add in the long-running consequences of the global financial crisis in 2008, and we were really ripe for demagoguery and somebody who understood media and how it operates, and enter Donald Trump.
Yeah. So as you talk, Patrick, what I'm hearing, what I'm taking away from part of this is that our democracy here is losing, or maybe it has lost, one of the basic tenets, which is you and I may not agree, but I will defend your right for this disagreement. You know, I paraphrase what the word is, you know. Do you see that? I mean, if some people in the media speak out with their point of view or facts that someone doesn't agree with, there's a violent reaction to that.
Right, and I mean, when you say violent reaction, we don't know anymore if you're being metaphorical, because now we're seeing actual political violence emerge.
Exactly.
Yeah, on both sides, and yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question that we've had a loss of civility, and that's really understating it when you think of how bad it's gotten, and that's going to be a tough one for us to recover from. The easiest solution to me, and it's not that easy, is that if the Republican Party were to continue to suffer losses when Donald Trump's not on the ballot, people in the party will get tired of losing, and that style of politics that he has, that are his hallmark, may fade away. I mean, the question is there Trumpism without Trump? And do we get some restoration of civility, or at least a new kind of social political contract between the two sides if and when Trump leaves the stage?
Yeah, well, this may be a place to ask the question. From your perspective, do you see or anticipate what we might call a blue wave coming in the 2026 elections or the 2028 elections?
I think that I don't want to look out at 2028 just yet, but I think 2026, much will depend on, and it always does, on the economic issues that are very determinative for a lot of American voters.
I vote with my pocketbook, my wallet, right?
Yeah, I mean, the old saying amongst political scientists, when I took American politics classes in the 1990s, was there's two salient issues in American politics. That's the economy and race. And so, I think that the analysis of the 2024 election that there was a realignment, there was some crushing defeat for the Democrats. To me, it was a little overstated. I think it was just the fact that inflation is very bad for incumbent parties. So that being said, Americans still seem to be very dissatisfied with the economy, and I don't really see that changing. I'm not an economist, but you can still see people being frustrated with the cost of health care, child care, housing, which are really three big ticket items. You don't really see affordability of those items coming into focus in the next year. And so that certainly doesn't bode well for Republican. Trump himself, his popularity has declined really significantly in the last couple months, and he seems to be bottoming out a little, although he could probably go even more, which suggests that his political coalition is actually fracturing because he's losing some of his own supporters. There's a big fight in the Republican Party, at least amongst the elites, but I think it bleeds down into very online younger Republicans, between sort of more traditional Republicans and we're calling them groypers, or sort of very anti-Semite curious. put it that way. Nick Fuentes has a huge platform, again, on YouTube, podcast, and this kind of thing is damaging to an incumbent party because they need to be united. You're seeing Republican congressmen and women acting much more independently. So these are signs of weakness, I think, in the Trump coalition. Democrats also have the advantage of their coalition has changed in the last 10 years, become much more focused on college graduates. Now, I think that's probably a political mistake. You're going to have a hard time putting together a majority coalition of college graduates in this country because they're not the majority. On the other hand, in off-year elections, in a congressional election, that's an advantage because those voters turn out. And so your occasional voters who especially turned out for Trump are less likely to come out in 26. So I think there are a lot of advantages for Democrats going into next year. There was, I think, a little hidden advantage for Republicans. In February, March, people are going to do their taxes. They're going to get big tax refunds because they structured the tax bill that they passed and Trump signed on July 4th to be retroactive to the first of the year. So,
which is unusual. Law doesn't usually act.
We don't
act
usually
that way.
do that. Yeah. And so people are going to get, they increase the standard deduction. They eliminated taxes on up to a certain level on tips and overtime. There's a number of provisions that people have been paying taxes on that the law says they don't have to, and they're going to get big refunds. And so there's going to be an infusion of cash, and that gives people a good feeling, at least, even if it doesn't really solve their economic problems. It gives them a good feeling, and it might boost the economy a little bit in the late winter, early spring. So I think that was a very shrewd move. They also didn't do their Medicaid and SNAP cuts until after the election. Yeah. So that was another shrewd move. The negative effects of that bill will not be felt right away. So
it's all calculated.
It's very calculated. Yeah.
For the Democrats, what do you make of Mamdani's election in New York? Is that an omen or a sign of maybe where at least a portion of the Democratic Party is headed?
I think there's a couple things about that that are very local to New York City. I mean, New York City is really something unto its own. I mean, it's not, you can't really compare it to anywhere else. The size of it, the economy, everything about the place is just different than the rest of the United States. So I think that's an important caveat. There's a few interesting things. One, the Israel-Palestine issue is felt very keenly in New York City, and the politics of that issue have changed completely since the attack on Gaza that was, I think, so many Americans, including Jewish Americans, feel was prosecuted in a deeply cruel and unjust way. And that's really changed the politics of that issue, especially amongst Democrats. And so what might have been a real liability in years past is no longer. And so I think that's important on the Mamdani point. The second thing I'd say is that he turned out to be an incredible politician. He just has a real feel for media, and especially how media works now, and creating media yourself. Whenever I would watch videos of him, eating his favorite egg sandwich or whatever, I mean, you can't deny that it's
charismatic.
It's charismatic.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, even if I don't always share his political positions. He was also very smart about, once he won the primary, he really reached out to moderate factions of the party, and as well as the business community and so forth. They have I think a person considered to be very effective police they call it the police commissioner there, Tisch. He committed to keeping her. So an olive branch, I think, to the New York establishment. So there's a lot of very local, and of course New York City is the most expensive place in America, and it's almost impossible to live there unless you're very young and willing to live with 7 other people.
Sacrifice a lot
in
of
a
things,
4-bedroom, or you're very rich. And it's unfortunate because New York's an incredible city, and it ought to be a place where middle-class people can thrive, and he wants to do that. But the economic circumstances of New York City are very different than Minneapolis or Egan. And so I don't know that that's transferable.
So,
on the other hand, the affordability issue, because everybody's talking about it now, he's the one who used that word. And so that certainly has
Well,
the
socialist view, I think, came through very, very strong with this message.
Well, he calls himself a democratic socialist, and those are his politics. But the reality is, life in New York's not going to change that much because they already have the highest taxes in the country. They already have rent control. So his hands are a little tied. I don't really see much changing in New York, despite his intentions.
So Patrick, the last couple of minutes of our program, let's come back to the question. Can the current state of politics get any worse? And I want to hear your answer. A, yes. B, no. C, maybe. D, probably. E, I don't know. And why it's your answer.
I'm an Irish fatalist and a big believer in Murphy's Law, so I think it can certainly get much worse. But I'm also maybe naively hopeful, and I think that that Trump and his authoritarian effort have crested. I think that he's hit a high watermark. It doesn't mean that it's over. It doesn't mean that a lot of people haven't already been hurt and won't be hurt in the future, because as he feels more cornered, he's likely to become more extreme. I mean, just yesterday he threatened to hang lawmakers whose actions he didn't like. But I do think that the resistance we've seen, the small d democratic resistance across the spectrum, Democrats, Independents, Republicans, has held, and so I think we got a lot of work to do on our democracy. But I feel better than I did 6 months ago.
So you're hopeful that things will get better and can get better. Cautiously hopeful.
Yes.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for your perspective and the information that you've shared with us. It's been a very intriguing conversation that we've had. I wish we had more time to talk about all of the things that you know so much about and can share with our viewers. But unfortunately, we have run out of time on this program. And we want to say thank you again. Keep up the good work that you and your staff are doing with the Minnesota Reformer. We need that kind of media, that kind of news coverage available, and we appreciate the fact that you're doing us. And we want to say thank you to our viewers for joining Access to Democracy.